got a weird kind of, some kind of little cowlick going on in my like poorly cut in faux hawk thing. Anyway. Welcome to my daily videos, which I'm doing during lockdown, just to, as a way of keeping myself sane and also as a way for me to help people, keep people company. That was a really messy one. Anyway, this week I watched Inglourious Basterds. Hey, have you seen it? Let's have a talk about it. So, if you're enjoying my daily videos, feel free to subscribe and comment and like and stuff, which I've never really asked anyone to do before, but who knows? Maybe we'll take off. I've got, in true movie talk fashion, a takeout looking drink and some popcorn, which again, in true moviegoer fashion, I have already started eating. And that's what you do before the thing even begins. You eat all of the popcorn, at least I do. That's why I have to buy a deluxe extra large popcorn so that it's not all gone by the time like the first act is over. So, Inglourious Basterds. Let's talk through it, and then afterwards I'll let you know what I thought about it. So it is a 2009 film by Quentin Tarantino. I think the last one he did up until, what's that recent one called? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I haven't seen that. And obviously, it's got him written all over it. It's very, there are some like bold cinematic choices that are clearly trying to be very noticeable as bold cinematic choices. And also, the violence. So when the film opens, you see like this man chopping wood and he is fit. Like he's fit. There is a really gorgeous French man chopping wood. And then there's this really long scene of the two of them just talking. And you learn that he is a good guy too, because he's hiding Jewish people from the German army. And it all seemed quite irrelevant up front until then you realise that that first scene is actually to establish the character of the evil German officer who came to that French guy's house to hunt Jewish people. And, it's really quite drawn out. There's quite a long wait until you learn that he is actually harbouring someone, and he's got this like smolder and they jump between languages, and the French guy's just like, he's so pretty. But it's sad because in the end he gives up the family that he's helping hide, but then the daughter of the family, I guess, she seems really young, I'm assuming she's the daughter, she manages to get away. That brings us to the start of our film. But actually, about turn. I'm not going to talk about this in order. I'm going to talk about it as things come to me. Because I don't really remember much about the film. I don't know what came immediately after that. I haven't a clue. First of all, let's talk about the spelling, right? So, it's spelt weird. And at first, I didn't know anything about the film before I, started watching it. So I was like, maybe it's something someone says about them or to them in the film. But no one ever does. They call them the Bastards, but, not in a particular Bastards kind of way that would say the E. But then, at one point, the main character, who's played by Brad Pitt, he's good in it, actually, Aldo Rain. The character is called Aldo Rain. He sets down a rifle, and it has, etched into it, Inglourious Basterds, and it's spelt like the title. So then my mind was just like, oh, the point is, Aldo Rain can't spell, because he's very, they play him up to be this kind of, he's a bit of a jock, really. He's, very violent, very black and white. And, yeah, I just assumed, he can't spell, and it's a reference to that. It's, I don't know. There's no, deeper meaning to it. Do you know what I mean? There's no reason to worry about it anymore. But then just to double check, I looked it up, and people have asked Quentin Tarantino this question, and he has responded, that's the Tarantino way of spelling it. Don't you just hate him? Fair enough, he could just be saying that to obscure the fact that it should be an obvious read from the film, maybe. I don't know. He seems like that kind of dude that's if you don't get it, I'm not telling you. Because he just seems like that kind of slimy character. That's what I thought it was. And speaking of Tarantino, right? We've learnt recently, right? I don't know recently, maybe it's been going on for longer than recently. And this is just, I've only paid attention to recent years. But doesn't he get like really annoyed when you ask him about his portrayal of violence? Like he flips his shit at journalists, doesn't he? There's a lot of violence in this film that didn't need to be there, right? Like that didn't need to necessarily, I don't know. It's gratuitous. Like I would say it's gratuitous. And if you're worried about constantly being asked about violence, I suppose you shouldn't let people dictate what you put in your movies, right? But if he just acts as if he resents that he has to even address violence whilst simultaneously really overdoing it in his films so that it's a clear motif, right? Like at one point at the very end of the film, spoilers, you shouldn't be listening to this anyway if you haven't seen the film yet, but like Aldo Rain is carving a swastika into a guy's head, and he's doing it so deeply and closely and graphically, and the camera is so close that whilst he's cutting, like, he's almost finished and he's cutting certain lines of it, you can see how, like, the pulling of the knife is pulling the skin on his forehead, and it's, like, moving over his skull bones, and, like, I'm just... Do you need that? Do you need... You know, I don't know. For someone that seems so resentful of his reputation for gratuitous violence, he just really seems to really be into gratuitous violence, right? It's like if I was constantly eating, I don't know, purple jelly beans all the time, and people started saying to me like, oh, you're that purple jelly bean guy. Why is it that you're so into the purple jelly beans? And I was like, don't talk to me about purple jelly beans. I wouldn't see the logic in that. Like if I resented that reputation, I wouldn't eat them. But... That's reductive, but you get what I mean. And speaking of Aldo Rain, like, Brad Pitt did a really good job with him. He was clearly like a wanky insert character for the viewer, or for like, you know, a certain kind of viewer. I think we both know who. But I kind of liked him, right? Like in a world full of people that were really like duplicitous, he was just clear cut. And I think that, you know, he does like a kind of, I guess he goes against orders or something at the end. And you could kind of see it coming from a mile off, right? Like they'd long since established the kind of, you know, they were laying the groundwork for his kind of behaviour, the kind of thing he does, and for his outlook on the world. So I think that you kind of knew what he meant to do. And part of me thinks that you were supposed to know. Like they laid enough groundwork with Aldo Rain that you as the audience were supposed to recognise that what the film was telling you was going to happen wasn't going to happen. Do you know what I mean? And I guess that's quite clever. So the thing is, he's supposed to take the big bad officers guy from the very beginning of the film and return him to the Allied forces. And so before he does that, knowing that this guy is going to be able to, you know, retreat somewhere in America and live there and forget all about the war ever happened, that's when he carves the swastika into his head so that he doesn't get to live as an ordinary person. Everyone knows what he's done and he doesn't get off for it. And I thought that, like, you know, if it was deliberate to give you something to not be misled by, I don't know, I thought it was just kind of like a clever move and maybe a bit difficult to pull off, but not to praise Quentin too much. And there's just small choices like that just, I don't know. I liked the long takes, right? Like I liked that about Kill Bill as well from Quentin Tarantino. The long takes of like moving over and around the set and stuff. I think that, you know, while it breaks immersion a little bit, it's just cool. Like it makes it feel, I don't know. I like it. I like it. So like if we're following one person from one room to another, the camera like is clearly craning and it goes over a piece of wall and down on the other side. It was cool. And also they did a lot of it in the setting of like, there's a cinema as part of one part of the set and one part of the film, sorry. And the foyer of the cinema, a lot of kind of like tracking goes on there and long takes and stuff. And I like long takes because I just think of the logistics of getting it right every time, right? I think it's a really, something to applaud for everyone that's like involved in the actual doing of it. It must have taken quite a lot of takes. And speaking of long takes, like there's a character who they establish via his reputation first, who they call the, I don't know if this is an acceptable term, right? But they call the Bear Jew. And when they start talking about how big he is and how he's mistaken for a golem and everything, I was like, oh, hello, I like a bear. So I was excited to meet him. And then they do this like really, really long, drawn out sort of sequence where he's slowly revealed. And I think that went on a little bit too long. After about halfway through the time they were spending just looking at this empty doorway, I was like, ah, come on. And then when he comes out, I was like, whew, because he's like thick set and he's big of arm and he's got this like popping shoulder vein and he's swinging this bat. And So then naturally, as you do, then I looked up who his actor was so that I could enjoy maybe a bit more something, right? Turns out it was Eli Roth, like the director of Hostel. So then I sort of, cooled a bit on him. In case you couldn't tell already from the kind of criticisms I've had of this film, I'm not really a fan of like gore for gore's sake. I'll watch horror movies and stuff because I think that I like tension, but films that are just gratuitously gory and show you disgusting things just because they're disgusting to get like a shock out of you, that's not a bit of me, I don't think. If you get your kicks like that, you get your kicks like that. But I don't need to see incredibly grisly, gory, disgusting, stomach churning things. Full stop. I just don't need to see it. But Hostel, from what I heard and from what I've read online, it seems to be just that, right? It's also, I feel like there's another film that's along those kind of lines or something. Is it called Martyrs? And then by the end, some lady is skinned or something and she's still alive. It's not for me. Saw, I liked Saw because I think that there was the Saw films are camp, okay? They are so camp. And there was a kind of element of, I liked the intrigue behind it all, all the overacting and the melodrama behind the scenes of the traps. And I thought that the traps, a lot of the times, were quite inventive, right? My least favourite part of it was when people didn't escape the traps and grisly stuff happened. But, and also when that guy gets trapped in the closing walls. There's bone. And that thing, so at one point the secret agents are in a basement tavern and there's a British secret agent and they're playing undercover Germans, and then the British guy orders 3 glasses and he says 3 glasses, and then we learn that that's how they got him and that's how they knew he's not German, because apparently in Germany they order it 3, and that looks strange. And I was like, does it? Does it look strange? Is that true? I should have looked that up before starting this video. I mean, if it is true, then fair enough. But if it's something that kind of just roughly put together for the movie, then I don't know. That's not terrible crime. It's just a little bit wanky, isn't it? Let's look it up. So I'm on Quora, and someone has asked, is it true, as depicted in the film Inglourious Basterds, that German would signify the count of 3 using their thumb and 2 adjacent fingers, while Anglo-Saxons, Americans and Asians, I presume, use 3 middle fingers? And someone who said they're UK-born, now 25 years in Germany with no plans to leave, responded, yes, it's absolutely true. Watching the film in Germany, you could hear a sharp intake of breath when he said the order. It was so strikingly foreign that it was quite implausible that not everyone in the scene noticed it immediately. Imagine someone bowing instead of accepting a handshake. It's that obvious. Ooh. Oh. He then goes on to say that says, mind you, Michael Fassbender had such a very strong English accent in German that the whole thing was rather ridiculous. Well, he had an excuse for that in the film, didn't he? He was from some kind of crazy mountain village or something. I don't know. Dropping my popcorn. Getting corns in my lap. So anyway, let's get back on track. I think that my favourite character was probably the owner of the cinema. I forget her name. It was a fake name, wasn't it? Because turns out the owner of the cinema was the girl that escaped in the first opening scene. But you know that from early on. And also, the whole thing's divided into chapters, really arbitrarily. I don't know why. I don't know if that's some kind of reference to old cinema or something like that. There's a lot of this film that smacks of old cinema. It's one of the themes of the plot as well. And I just think that there's part of me that thinks that's Quentin Tarantino writing a love letter to himself. And we'll come back to that, put a pin in that. But I thought she was really cool, running that cinema and stuff. She says that she inherited it from her aunt and uncle, and you never really know if that's a lie, but I don't know how she would have got it otherwise. But then she's being harassed by is it Zola was his name? I don't know. I just remember he's played by Daniel Bruhl. But Daniel Bruhl is really cute, right? Doe eyes and everything. But he always seems to be a villain. Maybe it's because he's got that kind of look, a bit of intensity while still being kind of cute, so he can play the innocent, but secretly he's an arsehole. Anyway, in this film, he seems innocent and then he's secretly an arsehole. They laid the groundwork to show that he was actually kind of a dickhead, because he just steamrolls her every step of the way. Where she's like, I want nothing to do with you, I don't care about you. She then gets invited and told that her cinema is going to be the location of the premiere of the film that he has starred in and that is about his life, and he just continuously steamrolls her. So clearly they lay plenty of groundwork that he's an arsehole who can't take no for an answer. So when he snaps and is actually forceful with her, that was established, right? Let's take the pin out of Quentin Tarantino writing a love letter to himself. Closing shot of the film, Aldo Rain, Brad Pitt's character, has just finished carving his swastika, right? And he looks right down the camera lens and he says, "I think this might be my best work yet." It cuts and it says, written, directed by Quentin Tarantino. I'm like, you slimy git. I guess you can be proud of your work, right? But there's no one that is so... That film took an entire crew to make, right? Like, you can be the auteur without acting like you're the god of the movie. Do you know what I mean? Oh, that just sat on me wrong. And I bet, you know, this is... when did I say it came out? 2009. 2009. I bet this has already been talked to death, because I feel like that's probably the kind of thing that someone like Quentin Tarantino would do, knowing that people would think it was audacious. And then he would be like, yes, that's because I am audacious and I'm daring. I don't care what you think. When he so clearly cares what people think, because he gets sensitive in interviews and goes off the handle and whatever. Like, he's just, oh, I don't know, man. There's something about him that creeps me out. So what did I think of the movie? Yeah, it was all right. There were parts of it that were fun because they were indulgent, and that's very Quentin Tarantino. And there were bits of it that were, I think, accidentally campy because they were over the top and they missed the mark while trying to be cool, and that's camp. And I don't know. I wouldn't tell someone not to see it, and I'm glad that now I'm in it, because it was like such a big cultural thing at the time. I think it was very self-indulgent, and I think that there was many good performances wasted on kind of lukewarm characters, right? Okay, bye.